For thousands of years, some of the smartest people in the world have been asking themselves versions of the same question. Why do we like what we like? Is there a formula for beauty, for popularity, for human affinity? And the ancient Greeks said, yes, of course there is. It's the golden ratio, 1.62, et cetera, to 1. And then the Enlightenment thinkers said, yes, of course there is. It's Kant's theory of aesthetics. But today, we don't have the golden ratio. We don't have philosophers. We have Google and Facebook. We have advertisers. And in the advertiser formula, the first variable is always novelty. This is a scientific fact. They actually went through, several decades ago, all of the words they could possibly find in all the advertisements that were out there. And the most common word in all of those ads wasn't buy, wasn't now, wasn't risk-free warranty. It was new. We are living in a cult of novelty. Companies want us to like new things, to buy new things, to crave new things. But the truth is that we don't like novelty. In fact, we hate it. According to the mere exposure effect, one of the oldest and most robust theories in the history of psychology, the mere exposure of any stimulus to you over time will bias you toward that stimulus. In English, familiarity good. And indeed, when you think about it, we seek out new songs. But the songs that we most reliably enjoy are those with familiar chord structures and timbres. We seek out new movies. But every year this century, a majority of the top 10 films in America have been sequels, adaptations, or reboots. Familiar. In fact, maybe the best proof of the power of familiarity is that thing that is so familiar to you, your own face. It turns out that people prefer the face they see in mirrors to the face they see in photographs. Maybe you have a friend who complains constantly about how he or she looks in Facebook photos, but is often constantly admiring his or herself in the mirror. Well, this is not pure vanity. This is mere exposure effect. The face is slightly asymmetric. We see different versions when we see a reflection versus a photo. And if you're not a celebrity, then the version you're most used to seeing is not in a photograph, but rather in the most common reflection in the world, in a mirror. You prefer that version of your face, not because it's you at your most beautiful, but because it's you at your most familiar. In fact, the power of familiarity seems so deep that people think it must be written into our genetics. The evolutionary theory for the preference for the familiar is that if you're a hunter-gatherer and you're trawling the savanna of Africa and you see a plant or an animal and you recognize it, that's a very good sign that plant or animal has not killed you yet. So, of course, you should prefer it. But this creates an enormous problem for creators, for creative types. Because I just told you that people only like new things if they're just like old things. So the question before us today is, how do you balance familiarity and surprise in such a way as to design hits, to design things that people love? Is it possible to engineer a familiar surprise?